Okay, good morning. We continue. We're continuing with our learning of the Aruch HaShulchan. We're in Siman Aleph. We're up to Sif Vav. Last time we looked at Sif Hey and his discussion of the first foundational yesod that he wants to talk about before getting into the halacha, which is just to understand the yesod is to know, to know, to appreciate to the extent that we can, the Yichud Hashem. We talked about HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the Mahave HaKol. We talked about HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the Borei HaKol. These reflect the ideas of Sovev Kol Almin and Mamale Kol Almin, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu being intimate, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu being remote, HaKadosh Baruch Hu being unknowable, HaKadosh Baruch Hu being also present and imminent in a way that we can access. And the crux of all of that was that within all of that, this HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we are encountering is Echad, Yachid, Umiyuchad. This is just the same thing. The whole thing is the same thing. We're referring to a singular entity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, outside of which nothing really exists at all. And that encompasses everything. And then he continues in Sif Vav and he says, Es ha'elokim hazeh, this HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this God that we just described, this transcendental and present, all wrapped up together in a totally all-encompassing, singular, absolutely and totally unified whole, that God that we're describing, to the extent we can describe it, anachnu mechiyavim, that God we have an obligation, la'ahavo, ahava gemura v'chaluta. We have an obligation to love that God with a complete, total, absolute, all-encompassing love. So much so, he says, ad shekol ha'ahavos kamo ahavas atzmo, ahavas ishto, ahavas banav u'benosav, ahavas hamamon, you batelim neged ahavaso yisparach vehema kala kilomamish. That so much so, this love that we have a responsibility and an obligation to love this thing that we're calling HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this idea, this description of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that love that we're supposed to feel, that love is supposed to be more intense, more all-encompassing, more absolute than any other kind of love that we experience. More intense and more absolute than Avas Ishto, love for a spouse, love for children, love for money, possessions, and not just a matter of love, but need, reliance, connection. All of those other kinds of love are nothing, are batel, in the face of the love that we are supposed to have towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That sounds like a very big, tall order. But on the other hand, the very fact that he's describing to us other kinds of love that are now supposed to not be anything in comparison to the love we're supposed to have for this idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he described in the previous Sif, that gives us a mashal for understanding what in the world Ahavas Hashem might be. Right? This is a basic yesod, of course, in Penimei HaTorah, that to whatever extent and different nesivos, different paths in Penimei HaTorah, and different understandings, particularly of the Kabbalas HaRizal, take this into different ways and in different senses, but we speak about the idea that the things we're familiar with in this world, the experiences we have in this world, they give us a tool, they give us an access point, they give us a kind of mashal, a mashal for understanding or appreciating things that are much higher than them. And they're not just a mashal, but they're reflections of that, of the nimshal. It's not just like the tortoise and the hare is a mashal for hard work and perseverance and whatever. No, it's that the mashalim that we experience, mi besari echze elokai, the mashalim that we experience through a profound and deep self-awareness of ourselves and of the world around us and in the interactions and interconnectedness of things and how things interact and interrelate with each other, and interdependence, and so on and so forth, a deep understanding of that is not only a mashal to a nimshal that is separate from it, it is in and of itself an expression, manifestation, and a reflection of the nimshal. So although it's true that Ahavas Hashem is something far, far beyond what we can describe and experience, and all other love that we experience and all other love that we may have is batul and kilo mamish neged true Ahavas Hashem. At the very same time, how do we have any access to what Ahavas Hashem might look like, might feel like? How do we achieve it? What gets us there? Well, we need some emtsai, we need some handhold, we need some tool and means by which we can begin to access and understand what it is we're even searching for and trying to achieve in Ahavas Hashem. And we have real life examples of what that might be. Ahavas Ishto, that's one kind of love. Ahavas Banav Upenosav, that's a different kind of love. Ahavas Hamamon is a third different kind of love. These are all different bechinos, these are all different facets, different expressions, different particular kinds of love that a person experiences. The love between spouses is different from the love of a parent to a child. It's perhaps more conditional. It's perhaps based on things that the love for a parent to a child is not based on. It moves in different directions. It functions in different ways. It's experienced differently. Love between a parent and a child is different from the love a person has for money, for possessions, for financial security. That's also something that you love, that we love. But it's different in a different way, and we have these three different mishalim for different kinds of love experiences that we have. And although it might be hard to put words to them, especially in a short context, because books and books and books and books have been written on all of these things, both within Torah and within the secular world from other perspectives and in other senses. Nevertheless, regardless of all of that, all of these different kinds of ahava give us a shemetz of a sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about ahava. All of these other kinds of ahava pale in comparison to the real thing, but they're all stepping stones and ways of accessing, beginning to access that sort of thing. Right? And what is it that we're supposed to be loving? Where is that love directed? So again, es ha'elokim hazeh, this requires hisponenos, excuse me. This requires meditation, contemplation, reflection, deep reflection. One can't just read Sif Hey and now I understand what God is that I'm supposed to love. Right? The famous Kutzker, the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. One has to have a conception of what it is, a healthy conception, a proper conception of where it is that love is being directed or to whom that love is being directed. And that requires thought, deep meditation, deep reflection. And then the object of that meditation, the object of that reflection becomes the object and the other side of this relationship, that is Ahavas Hashem. V'zeu she'amar hakasev v'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol meodechah. And this is what it means when the pasuk says that you should love Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol meodechah. And he emphasizes b'chol meodecha v'hu lashon meod. That's a word that implies meodechah. A lot of the commentaries, a lot of the mafarshim talk about what is meodechah. What exactly does that mean? It means a lot. It means much. It means more. What does it mean exactly? For example, the Mashilach in a beautiful piece, he says b'chol meodecha means with all of your much, with all of your ma'od. What is your ma'od? Your ma'od is the thing that distinguishes you from everybody else, right? There's the things we have in common, and we have a lot in common. We have almost all of our DNA in common. We have basic physical form in common. We have basic intellect in common, and feelings and emotions and needs and wants and many things in common. And then every single person has things that are absolutely and totally unique to them that nobody else has. That's their ma'od. And the Ahavas Hashem, the Penimei Halachah at least says, has to be grounded. One of the things that has to be grounded in, one of the things that has to be utilized to experience and live out that Ahavas Hashem is whatever your ma'od is, whatever is unique to you, your uniqueness, the thing that you have, the more that you have that nobody else has, which is what you have more than everybody else. And the other person will have something more than you because they have something unique that you don't have. Those things are what you're supposed are really where the Ahavas Hashem comes in, which that's what the Penimei Halachah says. But here the Aruch HaShulchan says v'hu lashon ma'od. It's a lashon of a lot, of much, kolomar, meaning kol hachaviv alecha ma'od ma'od. The way he's understanding this is a way of reinforcing what he just said, which is that whatever is very, very beloved to you, b'chol meodechah, whatever you love a lot, tibatel neged avaso yisparach. It should be batel. It should be nullified. It should melt away in the face of your love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One interesting way of conceptualizing this and even possibly experiencing this is thinking about it in terms of Richard Meyer Morgenstern talks about this in a couple of places. One way of conceptualizing this might be that a person can sort of contemplate and reflect on how it is that their love for their spouse, their love for their children, their love and concern for money, finances, possessions, whatever it is, whatever things and people and so on that one wants to identify, how much does that love fill them and occupy them? How much space within themselves does it fill? Right? It's one thing to love a spouse when you're right there next to them. It's one thing to love a spouse when you're out on a date. It's one thing to love a spouse when there's intimacy and things are good together. Right? It's a different thing when you're at work and you're busy and you're answering phone calls and you're trying to get deadlines met and things like that. Where is your mind? Right, the spouse is not next to you at that, but right, you're not with them in a physical sense, in a proximity, a physical proximity sense. But how much space in your mind are they present within that experience too? Or is there some bifurcation? And now I'm at work, and then I'm going to go home and I'll be with my spouse. But when I'm at work, I'm at work. And how much is on your mind about your spouse? How much space do they occupy within your mind? Not all of the space, because you have to go to work. But are they there? Are they present? Right? When you go grocery shopping, and you're going up and down the aisles and buying the stuff on your list, is your spouse on your mind so that when you encounter the thing that's not on your list and you say, my spouse really enjoys that thing or would really appreciate if I picked that up and brought it home and whatever, that's your spouse on your mind, right? In a background corner of your mind, but present. It's there in the background. Our minds are fantastic things. We can do two things at once. They're present within your mind. The same thing with children, the same thing with money. Right? There are people who constantly, regardless of what's going on, there's a background noise. There's a background noise of worrying about finances. Right? Anyone in the Orthodox community can probably appreciate and relate to this because finances are very hard. Or children. It's one thing to be loving and thinking about our children when we're reading a bedtime story, or we're having a deep conversation, or we're driving them to and from school, or they're hanging on us while we're trying to do something else, and so maybe we're thinking about them in a negative way. But how much space does that occupy outside of that immediate experience? All of the things that occupy us, that fill us all the time or so much, Ahavas Hashem, he's saying, ma'od, Ahavas Hashem, all of that occupation is tisbatel neged avaso yisparach, right? The consciousness that's constantly on the mind of the Ohev Hashem, the consciousness, the mindset not necessarily in the absolute total foreground, although one can get there and still do and be a fully functioning normal person. But the thing that's constantly, consciously, not but it's present in the mind is Ahavas Hashem. It's consciousness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is present. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is transcendent in this experience and that experience, at this moment, in that moment, at this place and that place, interacting with this person, interacting with that person, doing this thing, doing that thing. That's Ahavas Hashem. Ma'od, everything else is batul, because as much as all the other things do occupy my mind, and hopefully they should occupy more of our mind, again, they should always be on our consciousness, even as much as that is true, all of that occupation of our consciousness with children and spouses and financial and money concerns and whatever else we have to worry about, even as much as all of those things occupy us, that amount of consciousness of those things is batul, or should be batul, neged Ahavas Hashem. And that's what Ahavas Hashem is. It's constant connection through that consciousness. Uv'chol levavcha, and with all of your heart. Darshu Chazal famously say, Bishnei yitzircha b'yetzer tov v'yetzer ra. Levavcha is a double lashon. It doesn't say livcha, v'chol livcha. It says v'chol levavcha, which sounds like two hearts. Bishnei yitzircha b'yetzer tov v'yetzer ra. You have to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only with your yetzer tov, but also with your yetzer ra. What does that mean? Kolomar shalot samar yetzer ra kevan shemasas oschol avar aratzono yisbarach imkein echbaro. Never think that because the yetzer ra, because the parts of ourselves that are insecure, are needy, are desperate for all of the things we think we are missing, right? It's yetzer ra. Nachman teaches about this all the time. The yetzer ra is really the flip side of emunah. Emunah is everything is good, everything is fine, everything is okay because I am connected to and at peace with and trusting in the ultimate hashgacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything is exactly how it needs to be and is supposed to be. And the yetzer ra is in every place where that's not present. The yetzer ra is in every place where that's not present, so I need something else beyond what I currently have. Sha'asali called sarki is not fully there. And what I need is, I need this, I need this, I need to fix this, I need to fix that. And if I need to fix that, then there's space for me to go running into trying to do other things in order to fix that are neged the Ratzon Hashem, right? Because following the Ratzon Hashem and being within the Ratzon Hashem, it leaves me with a sense of lack, and I'm not trusting be'emunah shalema that how life is and how I am while operating within the framework of Ratzon and Avodas Hashem is good and right and safe and right for me and good for me. The yetzer ra comes in and says, oh, well, you need this and you need that and do this and do that, and that'll make it better and that'll make it better, right? You don't have enough money following Choshen Mishpat, so bend the rules of Choshen Mishpat a little bit so you get more money, right? Because you need more money. That's a very stupid and silly example. I mean, it's not a stupid and silly example, but in real life, it's much more subtle than that, of course. At least the difficult things are much more subtle than that. But in any case, right, that don't think that the yetzer ra that is here coming in to try and get me to be over on the Ratzon Hashem, that this is something that is neged the Ratzon Hashem, right? Because this creates a chalal, this creates a space within your life, an experience within your life that's empty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chilul Hashem. Right? I can't love HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shnei yitzircha if one of my yetzers, if one of my laves, the yetzer hara, is not Hashem, right? So to speak, which is impossible. I can't be loving Hashem with that yetzer hara. Degam kavanas hayetzer hara de'ha'emes hu, because the truth is degam kavanas hayetzer hara shelo tava lo v'lo tishmai love. The intent of the yetzer hara is also that you don't listen to it. It wants you to want to listen to it, and it doesn't want you to actually listen to it. The whole point of the yetzer hara is to push and to leave us in places where we then have to dig deeper to grow into an ability of more emunah and more bitachon and more willingness to be Kabbalah's ol and to sink into Yiras Hashem and Ahavas Hashem and so on and so forth, which we can't do if there's not a sense of challenge, if there's not spaces within our life where we're missing something and therefore we're challenged to not do things the way we should. But the yetzer itself is just an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that doesn't want us to listen to it either. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decreed, that the yetzer should try, that the yetzer should exist and should be trying to entice us and turn us away from the Ratzon Hashem, so that when we do what we do, it's always bebechira. It's done bebechira. It's not done forced. There's no value in forcing. And it's done with bechira in the sense that everything we get and everything we receive, chok hatov lehetiv, as the Arizal describes the ultimate purpose of creation in the very, very, very beginning of Eitz Chaim, the whole purpose of everything is to provide goodness for us. The ultimate goodness is to provide goodness in a way that we don't feel embarrassed and like schleppers receiving things that we don't deserve. So we get the impression that we deserve the things that we get, or we deserve the reward that we get. And the only way to earn is to have challenge and to have to work hard. And so by having to work hard, by having an internal battle between the neshama and the guf, between the yetzer and the yetzer tov, all of that produces an experience that whenever we achieve what we achieve, we feel like we've achieved it through bechira and growth and accomplishment and so on and so forth. And we're not eating nahama de kisufa. We're not embarrassed when we receive the rewards that we receive. And the truth is that this idea of Shnei Yitzircha, Ahavas Hashem Lakecha, B'chol Levavcha B'Shnei Yitzircha, this highlights an important idea in Penimei, which is that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealed to us b'derech yashar, in a bechina of or yashar, in a bechina, in an aspect, in a sense of direct. Here's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're grabbing it, like Rabbi Nachman says, Malek kol haaretz kavodo, he's here, he's present, I'm experiencing it. That's sometimes. That happens when we're engaging our yetzer hatov, and it's the aseh tov, and we're doing mitzvos, and we're having spiritual experiences, davening, and connecting with people in positive ways, and so on and so forth. Those are positive experiences and encounters with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we have Ahavas Hashem, so that consciousness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is filling our mind all the time, then every one of those experiences becomes a positive, tangible presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But at the same time, there's another way in which the world operates. There's another way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealed, and that is through absence. And so the yetzer is seeking, the yetzer is an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is seeking for us not to do what it says. Eat this, do that, try this, think that, speak this way, etc., etc. Don't do those things, is what the yetzer really wants, because in avoiding, in not engaging with certain things, in not grabbing this and grabbing that, there's another kind of revelation, another kind of experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? The experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that says, you are, that says, I'm here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here. There's a yesh. There's a tangible sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's an or yashar that's filling everything up, and I'm experiencing it. That's an experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is much bigger than that, because it's not only when he's present. If it's echad, yachad, and miyuchad, and everything is, he's mahave hakol, and everything is it, and there's nothing zulaso, then that means that it can't only be that he's here when he's here. It's also that he's here even in his not being here. And his not being here is also another form of encountering and connecting to the thing that I really can't conceptualize anyway. And so when I desist, when I avoid, when I respond to the yetzer by not engaging with the things that it's trying to entice me to engage in, now I'm accessing, again, another way of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through an entirely different bechina of or choser, of absence, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was here and I'm experiencing him, and now he's gone. And the only way I can experience him is by not doing, by avoiding, by stepping back and encountering him in the absence of what I'm doing, not in the positives of what I'm doing. And so that is also b'shnei yitzircha, which makes the Ahavas Hashem, again, more all-encompassing, because now it's not only in one side of my life where positive, it's not only in the aseh tov, but it's also in the sur merah. Shazehu ikar tachlis brias olam. This idea of you should have bechira, and because you should have bechira, you should not operate as forced, like malachim do, not forced in the sense of someone but forced in the sense of there's no other option. Right, the very, very beginning of human experience is the creation of an eitz hadas tov v'ra, where good and bad, or things that are seemingly consistent with the Ratzon Hashem and neged the Ratzon Hashem, exist intermingled in one space, so that there's a possibility of doing something else, because Malachim have no possibility of anything else. There's no conceptualization. There's no possibility of bifurcation between good and bad, right and wrong. It doesn't exist. There's just Ratzon Hashem for Malachim. But for us, there's an experience of Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. There's good and bad intermingled, and there's a possibility of therefore doing something negative the Ratzon Hashem, at least from our perspective, right? From Mitzido, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, nothing can ever happen and be done that's neged Ritzono. But from our perspective, there's an experience of there's good and bad in the world. There's right and wrong in the world. There's harmful and helpful, and healthful and positive and negative. And now I have the possibility of doing one or the other. And so now I'm not an autopilot robot. I'm a subject. I'm a doing creature. I'm not just an object of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's Ratzon. I'm an active subject that's experiencing things and making choices and doing things. And now I'm a real creature. And that in and of itself is an expression of the Chok HaTov Lehetiv, because I experience then a shemetz, a little tiny bit of what godliness is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the unbounded Hakol Yachol. And I too can have the shemetz of an experience, a mashal of that experience, or that experience of Hakol Yachol is reflected within my experience of Bechira. So exercising that Bechira, experiencing that Bechira, which only happens through the yetzer, is part of the plan, is a necessary part of the plan, so to speak. And consequently, if I'm conscious of these things, then I can be Ahavas Hashem b'shnei yitzircha b'yetzer tov u b'yetzer harah. Okay, we'll stop there. We're going very, very slow through the beginning, but we might go slow all the way. But these are points that are worth expanding on and worth fleshing out, I think. And Be'ezras Hashem, next time we'll continue with Sif Zayin.